The meeting is now live.
Okay, good afternoon everybody, and can I welcome you to today's Transport Committee meeting for the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority. Obviously, I hope everyone, wherever you are at home, are safe and well, both committee members, officers, but also anyone that might be kind of watching the live broadcast, which is, as we know, being sort of shown live on the Combined Authorities website live, but also will be available subsequently if people wanted to watch it back as a kind of repeat. Can I just do a bit of housekeeping and just remind members and officers that when you wish to speak, can you please do so in the chat box, and then we can make sure we can bring you in accordingly. Once we invite you to speak, please could you just give a few seconds just to unmute your microphone, switch on your camera so we can see you, and then we can have your contribution accordingly. And obviously, if we can ensure that when you're not speaking, if you can make sure that your microphone is switched off and muted, would be excellent. And likewise for any telephones or anything else that you might have around you, so that it doesn't pick up on the background noise. Okay, if we move into the items of business then, the first item obviously is apologies for absence. Shauna, have we had any apologies for absence today?
Hi, Councillor Robinson, it's Lisa. Yeah, we've had
Lisa.
It's okay, we've had apologies from Councillor Alan Jones.
Okay, I think we've also had apologies from Councillor Sue Murphy as well. Are we aware of...
I'll make sure those recorded.
Brilliant. Are we aware of any other apologies at this stage?
No, the only thing I would mention is we have a couple of members who are having access problems. So we've got Councillor Patrick McKinley, Councillor Paul Hayes and Councillor Gareth Stockton, who are all having problems accessing the meeting at this moment.
Okay, no, thanks for mentioning that, Lisa, because I'm very conscious that if it's a technological reason that's sort of holding people up, we still need to make sure we're recognising that they are seeking to attend. I think that's really important. Okay, if we move on to the second item, which is declaration of interest, that's obviously for me to remind all members that if there's anything that they need to declare as an interest now, or at any time during the proceedings of the meeting, please make sure that you do so accordingly. I'm not seeing any indications, so let's move on to the third item, which is the minutes of the last meeting. Can I move that those minutes are a correct record of the meeting that we held on the 5th of November, or is there any points anyone wants to raise before I do that?
Chair?
Yes, Gordon. Yeah.
Is the attendance correct?
Well, I think Helen's just indicating she wants to speak, so can I bring Helen in?
Yes, I'll bust out.
Yeah. Helen, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would just like to say I was present at the meeting. I did have technical difficulties and I couldn't attend in the normal way, but I did attend from my personal account. So I was able to follow all the proceedings, but I don't think I would have appeared on the list of attendees. So I would just like to mention that, please.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Helen. Obviously, if we can make sure that's kind of noted in the correct way, if I can defer to sort of Lisa accordingly as to the right way we can reflect that in the minutes. But otherwise, if everyone's sort of happy to agree, those as a correct record of what happened on the 5th of November.
Agreed.
Excellent. Let's move on to the first substantive item then, and that's the smart ticketing programme. And Gary Evans, I think, is going to take us through this report.
I am, and thank you, Liam. Good afternoon, everybody. So this is one of a series of reports that I bring forward to the Transport Committee to update members on our progress around smart ticketing, with a vision towards adopting and that journey towards a London-style ticketing solution for Liverpool City Region. I won't repeat the report in detail, but I try to set out in section 3 a range of some details around the progress that's been made over the last 9 to 12 months, and actually just try and paint a picture of what's planned over the next coming 3 to 4 months for members' benefits. Just some highlights, if I may share. In terms of our smart portal arrangements, the most notable change following its launch in January has been the introduction of our turn time solo products in August 2020, which has has significantly increased the number of registered users we have on our online sales portal now. So there's more than 7,000 registered cards with us, and we've sold more than 4,000 products. And a real catalyst for that increase was the introduction of term times in August, recognising the need for school products during that time. The report also summarises the investments we've made in our infrastructure, and they've continued throughout. So we've seen some highlights in there. Maintaining our bus fleet has got electronic ticket machines, Model 2, which allows EMV, or in effect bank cards, to be used as payment mechanisms. We've always, since July 2019, had a commitment that all of our bus fleet has got that Model 2 enabled, and the introduction of a new operator to the city region market in Warrington Buses saw us continue with that commitment, and has allowed us to put that EMV capability onto their services. As well as that, we've purchased a range of handheld electronic ticket machines, which means our colleagues in bus services, if they need to, due to the COVID-19 outbreak, if they need to increase the network capacity, they're able to do so and maintain that same level of service for our customers right across the region if need be. In terms of the rail sector, the report summarises the work going on behind the scenes with our rail operators and officers within the organisation to introduce platform validators, or PVALs, across all of our rail stations in the region, both on the Wirral, the Northern and the City lines. And as an example in there, there's 187 platform validators going into operation in the Mersey Rail estate alone over the coming month. The report details some other initiatives around our tap and go developments, our longer term aim to allow our customers to simply just tap and go with a true account-based ticketing offer, and we've been working with bus and rail operators towards that longer term solution over the last 9 months. It's been slightly delayed by COVID, but it hasn't stopped the momentum really. And some detailed work behind the scenes on ensuring our legal scheme agreement is updated with our operators, and work is well underway around a zonal review, particularly aimed at simplifying our ticketing zonal structure across the region to make sure it's much more customer focused and easier for our customers to understand moving forward. So there's some highlights from the report. Obviously not all of the details, so I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, that anyone may have from the content of the report.
Brilliant, thanks ever so much, Gary. Members, have we got any questions or comments anyone wants to raise? If you can indicate in the chat function if there is anything that anyone wants to raise. I'll certainly kind of just say, yeah, your kind of report, but also your presence really sort of shows all the hard work that you and the team are doing on this. There's some real good progress, and I think one of the things particularly I kind of think is great is that when we look at how we're in the process of, and quite nearly there with the rollout of the platform validators on all of our railway stations, bearing in mind all of our bus fleet locally is also geared up for smart ticketing and contactless payments. From a what I'll call an infrastructure side of it, I know it's more than that, it's hardware, software, everything. We are in a much better position than most other parts of the country outside of London. So that alone is very good, as well as all of the other aspects that you've taken us through. And Gordon is indicating. So Gordon, over to you.
Sorry, I couldn't put my virtual hand up because I can't see it on the screen. So a little technical issue. And yeah, it's a good report. It gets to the right to the crunch of the matters like these. But it was interesting about the data protection. Is I think that must be a back office function that's quite complicated, Gary, through you, Chair. I just wonder is how secure is it against, because there's been many of these sorts of cyber attacks that go on. Do we actually test anything in that direction, or is that MI5 keep mum?
Okay, no problem. At the moment, the privacy stuff isn't huge across the network, quite simply because the cards that we issue, the vast majority of those are anonymous. But clearly, as we start to develop the smart portal and we start to identify individuals personal information associated with the card, then that becomes a wider privacy impact. And yes, we are considering that in detail. That's one of the complexities we'll face with account-based ticketing moving forward. The more accounts we have, the more personal details we hold. We just need to be very sensitive around that. At this point, we obviously seek the assurances around making sure that any data we transfer is private and is encrypted to make sure we manage people's personal data appropriately in line with GDPR.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gordon. John's also written a question in the chat box. I don't know, John, are you able to verbalise that? Brilliant.
Just to say, I've got the same problem. I suspect other colleagues have, as Gordon just mentioned. The hand seems to have disappeared off the legend at the bottom, so we can't indicate what we want to speak. So I type mine now. Basically, my point, Gary, is thanks very much for your presentation. Very good. On 3.9, it talks about following the investment to move all Liverpool City Region buses to be fitted with Model 2 electronic ticket machines in July 2019. So that was quite a considerable time ago. I'm just wondering, in terms of the uptake, in terms of a demand for our solo products, etc., how's that been over the pandemic period? Has it been up or down or roughly the same, or where are we with that? Thank you very much.
No problem. So, John, there's actually two specifics in there in terms of the answers. As you'd expect with almost all of our products, demand has been down during the pandemic, quite simply because patronage levels have been down. So all of the ticket sales during that period across a whole range of products have been lower than usual, and you'd expect that if at times the bus patronage and the rail patronage have been down, sometimes less than half the usual figures. I think what has been evident, and this has been consistent right across all modes, so it's not just specific to the multi-operator, multi-ticketing, but we've seen a demand for contactless transactions increase. And that's a positive for us, and we've recognised that really, that this gives us an opportunity. So that investment in making sure all of our bus fleet had the EMV contactless option meant that operators for long periods of time, and all of our transport demand messages right throughout COVID, have encouraged contactless payments, and that's been really beneficial. Now, that's been in different ways, whether it's been an actual payment through an EMV card or whether it's been a contactless transaction through an ITSO card. Either way, they've increased significantly during that period, and we've seen less and less cash transactions as an overall percentage of patronage.
Thanks, Gary. That's excellent. That's as I suspected. Thank you very much. Thanks for your help with that.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, John, and thanks for that, Gary, as well. And just to sort of clarify, because Lisa's put in the chat function, that if any members want to sort of speak, please could you type that into the chat box that you want to speak. So, yeah, type the word speak or kind of anything that's suitable like that, and we can bring you in accordingly. If anyone is having any real technical difficulties, I would allow someone to sort of call out, but you know, if you are able to kind of type it into the chat function, that's what we should be doing as per protocol first and foremost. But fully appreciate how challenging all of this is, because we're still in a very new world of digital meetings, and I know from personal experience that each individual organisation tends to have a slightly different way of doing it. So Liverpool City Council is slightly different to the way the Combined Authority does it, which is slightly different to the way that Transport for the North does it. But I think we're doing really well in trying circumstances. However, if we kind of move on, and if I can move the recommendation on page 11 of the report, if that's agreed.
Agreed.
Excellent. And let's move on to item number 5, and that's responding to the High Speed 2 Phase 2B Western Leg Design Refinement Consultation. And we've got Tom Carberry, who's here to present this report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, members of the Transport Committee. We have brought a paper and a consultation response to you today for your approval. The government are currently consulting on further changes to High Speed 2 Phase 2B in the northwest of England and in Scotland. Officers within the rail team and within transport policy have been working together over the last couple of months to bring this response together. And in principle, the consultation exercise discusses changes proposed in Crewe, at Manchester Airport High Speed Rail Station, at Manchester Piccadilly, and for a new train stabling facility in Annandale in Scotland. As part of our response, we focused on the 3 changes proposed in the northwest of England, as we don't believe we have any overarching comments to make about the facility proposed in Scotland. The fundamental thing about these three changes proposed in the northwest of England is that they are all designed with Northern Powerhouse Rail in mind, and it goes to show that High Speed 2 as a project is now starting to formally recognise Northern Powerhouse Rail as a viable entity that is starting to take shape and take some hold in a far more tangible way than it has done to date. And through this response, we have proposed that we express general support for the changes High Speed 2 are proposing to their project, but we have raised some concerns in relation to a potential missed opportunity at Manchester Piccadilly with the changes that HS2 are proposing. The other thing that came out as part of the launch of this consultation exercise was an announcement from government to confirm previously consulted changes, which we had previously brought to committee as well. And the two changes in particular we were really pleased to have confirmed the passive provision for two junctions on the HS2 main line in the vicinity of the village of Highley in Cheshire. This is quite significant for us as a city region, as these are the junctions where a future MPR line could link into High Speed 2 and in future be built out all the way to Liverpool to ensure that we get full High Speed 2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail connectivity. In focusing on each of the three changes in the northwest in turn, at Crewe there is a proposal for a new junction to the north of Crewe, which would allow trains to rejoin the High Speed 2 route. Previously trains would be able to come off High Speed 2 south of Crewe, but would then have to stay on the existing railway network to carry on to their end destination. And the big win for us in this junction at Crewe would be that our High Speed 2 trains from London would be able to rejoin the High Speed rail network and then head up towards these proposed junctions in Cheshire at Highley to then run into Liverpool on the new proposed Northern Powerhouse Rail infrastructure. At Manchester Airport, the changes involve the provision of additional platforms, which again would allow Northern Powerhouse Rail services to stop at the Manchester Airport station, which wasn't previously possible. And then further at Manchester Piccadilly, HS2 have currently proposed an additional 2 platforms there, again to allow Northern Powerhouse Rail services to stop at the Piccadilly station. However, the concerns we've raised within the response that we're asking you to endorse and approve today are around the missed opportunity we believe that HS2 are effectively missing. Our colleagues in Manchester have worked up proposals for an underground station for Northern Powerhouse Rail at Piccadilly, in addition to the surface station that's proposed by HS2. We understand that colleagues in Manchester are working with the Department for Transport, with High Speed 2, with Network Rail to try and come to a single answer, but at the minute there are a few different options. And in effect, this option that HS2 have put forward in this consultation exercise only starts to go some way towards the full vision that we share with our colleagues in Greater Manchester. I think overall the changes that have been proposed through this consultation exercise represent a step towards the much needed wider transformation we're seeking from the rail network through HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail. But as I've said, we have highlighted our concerns around this missed opportunity in Manchester, but also we've highlighted the need for the NPR line coming into Liverpool to be a new build line and not an upgrading of existing line, particularly when we consider the needs in the future of for rail freight in the city region, and particularly thinking about the growth at the Port of Liverpool. Certainly once the 1st of January comes, I imagine that's going to be quite significant for us. I appreciate that's been a very quick dash through the paper and the contents of the consultation response, so I'm quite happy to take some questions now if there are any.
Marvellous, thanks ever so much for that, Tom. I've certainly got both Ken and Gordon indicating, so Ken, do you want to go first?
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for an excellent presentation. I think the way you've taken us through it demonstrates the involvement you have with this and the interest you show on our behalf with this. As you were saying regarding the connectivity, a question was raised, Prime Minister's question, Tom, I think it was a Leeds MP, on HS2, is about starting from the north and going south. With the build, as well as they've already started in Euston to do that. So, I mean, it would create jobs up here. also, as you were saying about the new port facilities which have been recently installed, I mean, that would take thousands of road trips off the road, which presently come from Felixstowe or Tilbury. Imagine the amount of carbon reduction that would take out of the system. Stop wagons coming up from the Midlands and through. But, also we need, with Transport Northern Powerhouse, for all the existing link lines from the port to be upgraded to take in the capacity they will hopefully be put on in future. So, I think there's quite a bit we can do, and you can possibly do, Tom, on our behalf, is by highlighting these things about, all the link lines from the port, starting to build the new link from Liverpool up into the Crewe area, and hopefully seeing how we go on there. But again, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ken. I don't know if there's anything you want to respond on that Tom. I think sort of Ken, really took us through a number of really important wider points as well, but I don't know if there's anything you want to respond on. Or
I think it's probably just worth highlighting that we continue to work with Transport for the North, particularly when we think about the phasing of how these routes might get built in the future, and we're certainly, as you might expect, promoting the notion of building the Liverpool to Manchester corridor within the Northern Powerhouse Rail programme first. We believe there is the biggest benefit to be gained there, both in terms of our journey times for passengers and also the potential for released capacity for new passenger services. But as highlighted in our consultation response, I think the key thing for us as a city region is focusing on the freighters, as the councillor picked up, particularly thinking about the ability to alleviate the highway network from HGV traffic, but also in trying to achieve our aims of zero carbon by 2040. I mean, a lot of these things are interlinked and can become quite complex, but certainly from an officer perspective, we are continuing to push very hard to ensure that we are first in the queue for the delivery of these schemes.
Yeah, brilliant. Gordon?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Tom, for the report that you've given. I think it's a good response. We've got page 19, 4.4, and Ken, Councillor McGlashan, just mentioned about the improvements that will lead to additional capacity for rail freight, and I'm glad that rail freight's not forgotten. I just think this is just such an important element, and it's something I want to see keeps getting mentioned, and I'd look forward at some point in time in the future to an update on the rail freight strategy, which I know is a matter that you're closely involved with. So thanks for including that in the response, Tom. I think it's a really important point. It'll probably be a long time happening, but at least if we keep mentioning it, it doesn't get forgotten. Thank you, Tom.
Brilliant, thanks, Gordon. Well, I think we're all determined to make sure one way or another it happens, but we will not rest until that brand new line is constructed all the way into the city region. And I'll sort of just finish, if there's no one else kind of indicating, just to say, I think, again, excellent report, Tom, and I know how you've been living and breathing this issue for a number of years for us now, and been doing an excellent job on that. The response pulls out all the important points for our region, the need to kind of have the passive provision for the junctions are in the Highley area to allow us to kind of have that brand new line linking all the way into the city. You rightfully make the point that the line upgrade options, we know from all the very detailed work you and the team have been doing, just would not work. It would give us slower journey times than we currently have on that Liverpool to Manchester corridor. It also would give us huge headaches with capacity and actually hinder our passenger and freight capacity elements. And this project is all about, at the end of the day, capacity and giving us the ability for more passenger services, local and national, but also more freight services on a longer distance basis as well. I think the other thing and final thing I'll pull out of the response, I was really pleased to sort of see how actually highlights, I think, on page 26 about how we recognise the importance of getting a classic compatible high-speed service through Runcorn and pushing for a third train an hour, Liverpool to London, one going through Runcorn station in Halton with that sort of stop, because we know how important that is for a really sort of vital part of our conurbation, in that kind of southeastern corner. So it's great that kind of that dialogue is going on with HS2 to make sure that we're protecting that, because obviously this whole project is not just about the benefit of the city centre. This is for the benefit of the whole region by giving us much better transport connectivity and capacity into the future. So if I can commend the whole response and move the recommendations on page 17
Agreed.
of the report, excellent. And I will move on nicely to item number 6, and it's the Union Connectivity Review. I should point out that's the Union of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Not sort of thought it's something different, and it's Suzanne Kane from our team who's going to take us through this.
Thank you, Chair. The report sets out a draft response to the Independent Union Connectivity Review, which was launched on the 16th of November. The review itself is going to make recommendations on how the UK government can level up transport infrastructure and improve connectivity between Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and England. It's been led by Sir Peter Hendy and covers road, rail, air and sea links, but it's specifically looking at how they could be improved to fuel the UK's economy from the COVID pandemic. I'm asking Transport Committee for their views on the issues central to the review, as set out both in the report and the draft response, and to grant delegated authority to the Director of Policy and Strategic Commissioning and the Chair to approve the finalised response ahead of the 30th of December deadline. The response isn't necessarily as worked up as I would like. As I say, it was only launched sort of middle of November, so we didn't have much chance to pull anything together before obviously the papers were produced, but what we've got so far I think sets out what we would like to cover. We're focusing on the fact that as a city region with a travel to work area that extends cross-border, the main focus of our response is naturally improvements to the Borderlands line and access into North Wales. But it's also an opportunity to highlight the need for improved port access and to improve Liverpool-Belfast links, as long as the long-standing need for improved rail links into Scotland, which I know has cropped up from time to time. As I said before, the draft response is clearly work in progress, and I know I need to include more detail on the need for improved links out of the Port of Liverpool to Northern Ireland and the importance of Liverpool John Lennon Airport, and we have asked for their data and evidence as well to input to the response. Other areas that I know need strengthening include the opportunity to strengthen links into North Wales and Cardiff via the Halton Curve and Transpennine Express services into Glasgow and Edinburgh. The concept of a land bridge from North America across the Irish Sea to continental Europe via the Port of Liverpool and across the Pennines to the East Coast rail ports, that's something that's cropped up from time to time and is very relevant to the rail freight strategy work that Gordon was referring to. So effectively the role of rail freight across the whole of sort of the England, Wales, Scotland corridor for ultimately to take as much freight as we can off the roads. Hydrogen and export and biomass import potential across the Irish Sea as well. This is a growing area and we know that there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done to ensure that that can continue across the Irish Sea. And fundamentally the economic potential of the Irish Sea region as an economic powerhouse as a whole. So with that all in mind, and as I say, it is only a draft response, I'm happy to take questions and any comments from members.
That's brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Suzanne. I've certainly got Steve first and then I've got Gordon. So Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Liam, and thanks for the report. I mean, clearly, as the news unfolds day by day, the issues of Irish trade are fundamental to the future and whatever deal or no deal Brexit brings. And I was reading through the report and I thought we would mention by name the 12 Keys roll-on roll-off facility as a specific and area that is almost vital, isn't it, because it serves both Dublin and Belfast. And we've had recent discussions over on the Whittle about any potential for issues around non-movement or non-free movement of goods and the issues of backing up onto roads and things like that. So I would hope that we would is a strength and should be highlighted by name, I think, within the report. And I hope you take that on board, Suzanne.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the point I want to make. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. We'll certainly make sure that that's included. Gordon?
First of all, well done, Suzanne, through you shared an excellent report. It's particularly when I can't find anything really substantial to add to it, it's got to be very good. The only thing I'd comment on really is, and I don't want to upset my neighbours across the border up in Scotland, but certainly this is a fine example of how everyone should be united across the nations, so that we have every country within the UK is rowing in the same direction, and we don't have the Scottish team drawing their oars in the opposite direction and putting us into a circular spin. So we need some decisive things across all the borders, and without complications of false political breakaways. So I hope Peter Hendy takes good note of my comments and tunes into this station. Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gordon. I think we'd all sort of agree that that sort of vital issue here is about the relevant kind of infrastructure and investment right across all the regions of Great Britain and Ireland, north and south, actually. I'll wrap up in the sense that we haven't got anyone else kind of requesting to speak at this stage, just by saying I completely echo everything that Gordon said about kind of how, in a very short time scale, you've already pulled something together, Suzanne, that's really, really good. I actually think this union connectivity review is going to be potentially quite influential, actually, because you've got to remember this is something that the Prime Minister himself has commissioned, and he's asked Sir Peter Hendy to lead on it. And I'm sure, as everyone is aware, Peter Hendy often is seen as the go-to man to deal with transport issues and challenges, and very much, I believe, has the ear of the current Prime Minister because of their previous working relationship when Boris Johnson was Mayor of London and Peter Hendy was the TfL Transport Commissioner. So I think this is going to be a really influential piece of work. I actually think it's vital for the Liverpool City region, because I think more than pretty much any other city region in the country, we have a really compelling story to tell, and that's pulled out in the report. We should always remember how kind of North Wales, for example, is part of our economic hinterland. It's next door to us, but one of the things that's held back the economic growth of that wider area, both here and in North Wales, has been traditionally poor transport links. Now, there's a lot in recent years we've done to challenge that, working with the Welsh Government, whether it's the Halton Curve, whether it's new sort of committed services, but there's more we need to see. And Borderlands and the Bidston Wrexham line, for example, is a key component of that. Also mentioned, Suzanne, about the sort of direct train links to Scotland that we have got back after more than 2 decades without them. We want to build on that. There's a lot of kind of economic, cultural, social and other links between ourselves and sort of our good friends north of the border in Scotland. But I think one of the key things I'm also very conscious of is our links with the island of Ireland, north and south. The key point there is that the port of Liverpool, and I mean that in its widest sense as a concept, both sides of the river, both 12 Quays and sort of and Seaforth, and the facility at Liverpool too, for example, is the main port for the island of Great Britain with the island of Ireland, and we really need to kind of recognise that and strengthen that further. We also should remember that kind of the air links from John Lennon Airport to Belfast, for example, is its strongest route. So there's a real sort of strong air imperative between our local airport. And finally, we also should remember that kind of for the island of Great Britain, we are the gateway to the Isle of Man, which is another key component part of that wider United Kingdom. So I think this is really important, and I think there's some really great things you've already got in there, and I know we will build it up even further before the submission date. I think the final point I was going to make, just in terms of how we deal with, obviously it is going to be delegated authority, but I think all committee members know I like to try to sort of send round a final draft amongst everyone, just so they can have a final comment if they should so wish. We will try to do that, but what I'll just sort of say is that that might be a bit tricky because of the time of year and the fact that, you know, that we are into a Christmas period. We will certainly try to get something out to people, but if that means we might only get sort of 24 hours for people to comment, please keep your eye on your email or whatever. But otherwise, if no one else is wishing to speak, if I can then move the recommendations, which are on page 31 of the report.
The recommendations, Chair.
Excellent. Okay, then our final substantive report then is item number 7, which is the quarterly bus update, and Laura's going to take us through this one.
I am, thank you, Chair. So the report in front of you is just the usual quarterly bus report, this time for Q3 of this financial year. It sets out successes of the Bus Alliance, also gives an overview of the assessment into the LCR devolution deal in respect to improving bus services, and an overview of how the bus team has maintained a safe and reliable bus network whilst dealing with the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. The report begins by highlighting some work that is currently being undertaken, sort of forecasting and modelling the impact of COVID-19 on the transport network in the region. And I'm aware that this report and the study from Mott MacDonald's is coming to a CA committee very soon, so members will have some more information on that. But it's sort of been interesting reading to see how the behavioural studies of transport users has been changing over the pandemic and is likely to change over the next sort of couple of years. Under the Bus Alliance milestones, the report updates on key projects such as the green bus routes, and also the hydrogen bus trial, which members had a detailed report on at the last meeting on the 5th of November. Obviously, under the Bus Alliance, there have been some milestones that have been deferred to next year, particularly those around campaigning on the Better by Bus campaign, and also driver training, which members will understand it was not sort of appropriate to deliver this year. But there has recently been launched a customer confidence campaign to increase bus users' confidence in returning and using to the bus. And then finally, just highlighting that there is an overview of the our bus reform assessment, and the fact that we have received 4 out of the 5 cases for the outline business case, and also an overview of how the bus team has been working closely with bus operators in order to keep services on the road under the current pandemic. I don't wish to go over the sort of pull out the report in too much detail, but if anyone would like any questions, then I'm happy to answer those.
Brilliant, thanks ever so much, Lisa. Do we have any questions or comments anyone wants to raise at this stage? I'm not seeing any indications. I suppose the kind of the key point I was going to raise. Oh, Gordon's indicating. So, Gordon, I'll defer to you first, mate.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. We could just go to page 42, and it's 3.3.2, and it's 2 questions. One is regarding B, the installation of the ITS. It's not got any kind of date attached to it. I've asked for this previously for information on this through the committee, and I wonder if there is an actual date for that, so I can take a further interest. If there isn't one available at the moment, could it be for the next answered at the next committee meeting in writing? And the installation of the RTI screens at Bootle and Huyton, they're on track for completion by the end of the financial year. Is there an actual date in that? Because obviously I've got an interest with the Bootle one being in my ward, so I'd quite like to venture out and have a look when it's done. Thank you.
Yeah, I can happily come back with some dates on that. As I say, they're on track for this financial year, but yes, I can get some exact dates. And ITS, I know there's a lot of work going on already with tracking signals, so again, we can get a firm date for when that will be up and running.
Is it possible to just for clarity on this one, to say, are we progressing matters in line with the traffic signalling, with the different systems that are operating between the local authorities?
Yes, I know our asset management team is working closely with other authorities in order to move, sort of identify those signals that need some upgrading, and in order to bring them in line with the wider ITS.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Gordon. I'm sure a socially distanced visit to see those RTI screens in Booth could be facilitated.
Could I just
yes, of course you can, John. Yeah.
I do apologise. My screen has frozen. I can't indicate anything. So I've got this tiny little dialogue box in front of me now. Just very briefly to say thank you very much to Matt, Laura and colleagues for the excellent work that's gone on and for this very, very good report. I'm particularly impressed by the quality of work that's going on with the green bus routes already, and also our move towards the hydrogen buses. And that's tying in with our green agenda. So thanks very much to everybody for all the hard work on that. It's just a comment from me. Thanks, Chair. Thank you for that.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for that, John. I think the only other thing I was going to raise, because again, very comprehensive report and shows how much significant work has been continuing to go on in light of the fact that we are facing still a global crisis in the sort of pandemic that we've got, albeit that hopefully with some of the news around vaccines we're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel, if you'll excuse that transport related pun. I think one of the things I wanted to pick up on actually was that I'm really pleased the fact that we are, I think it's item 3.3.3, page 43, that we're going to be doing a sort of confidence campaign for passengers on the bus network. I think sort of many officers will know this is something that's been very close to my own heart, because I'm very, very conscious about the way that there's negative perceptions around the sort of health and safety of the public transport industry, bus, rail and other things through the pandemic and beyond. And I think we really need to appropriately reassure people and see how we kind of get that message out and what other things we need to do. I'm just going to sort of suggest, and this is probably a wider piece of work than just the boss report we've had, that perhaps at a future meeting we probably should be receiving a report looking at post-COVID transport, how we think the effects of the pandemic are going to affect people's travel patterns, because we know that they will change people's travel patterns in some ways positively, in other ways potentially negatively. So we need to kind of factor that in. But also as part of that, how do we give people the confidence when it's safe and we've got the capacity to do so, to get back on all modes of public transport, both in terms of the messages we need to put out, but any further tweaks to the system we might need to work with the industry to put in place. So I'll leave that there as a suggestion, and perhaps kind of in a couple of cycles or something like that, we can, when we feel it's the right time to do that, we could bring back perhaps a wider report looking at the future of the network post-pandemic, because obviously there's lots we're doing in the current environment, and I know we are planning for what the world might look like when we can find a new normality. Gordon, you're indicating, is it on this point? Or?
Yes, it's just I'd like to endorse what you're saying, Liam, particularly because people are hungry for any information and there's so much out there, that at some point in the future I think it'll be really important to be able to answer questions that we can't, in all fairness, answer right now. So there's all sorts of talks about things like, if you've had a vaccine and a test, it act as a type of passport. Would that be for transport? I don't expect anyone to be able to answer that at the moment, but it's important that we do look to the future, because the future looks a lot brighter with the vaccine and things coming on. So I completely 100%, 101% back what you're saying, Chair.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for that, Gordon. Okay, then, if there's no further questions or comments, if I can then move the recommendation which we found on page 41 of the report, if that's agreed. Excellent. Okay, and our final item is actually public question time, and we have received a public question from Mr. Peter Jackson. I know it's been circulated to members previously. I'm not sure, is Mr. Jackson here to read it out? I know he did want it to be read out, or if he's not, I know, Lisa, you're going to read it.
Yes, Chair, I can read it. Yeah, Mr. Jackson was happy for us to read it out on his behalf. Okay, so Mr. Jackson has asked the committee, given the current strain on public funds due to COVID, does the committee find it acceptable that Mersey Travel is spending thousands on free Christmas Day buses, as many of these buses, Christmas Day buses, run more frequently or provide links which aren't available on any day of the year except Christmas Day?
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for that, Lisa. We're obviously going to give Mr. Jackson a detailed response in writing, as is part of our protocol, but I'll answer it sort of briefly and paraphrase somewhat. First and foremost, to really thank Mr. Jackson for his question. I think it's great to have members of the public sort of engaging at these meetings. It's a vital part of our role as democratic representatives, and I think he asks a very genuine and very reasonable question as part of that. I think in answering it, one of the things we're very conscious of is that for many years now we provided a free bus service on Christmas Day that is effectively to link the hospitals across the region, and as part of that we bundled together a number of services that roughly operate on an hourly basis for about 6 hours to link all of the kind of key hospitals, mainly because it's to provide a link for those people that may need to go to hospital for an essential journey, whether it's to visit someone, or more fundamentally for frontline NHS staff that have to work on Christmas Day. So with all of that in mind, we are conscious it's still the right thing to do. Yes, it does cost us money, but we do know that it does get reasonably well used for Christmas Day, and we're very conscious in the current pandemic that actually if we weren't to do that, how would some of those vital frontline NHS staff potentially get to work, and that would make their lives more difficult. I think the other thing I would add is that kind of there's many things in a normal Christmas period we would have done that this year because of the pandemic we're not able to do. So some of the late night services we traditionally would do on the bus and rail networks to support the Christmas party season, obviously because of all the restrictions the hospitality industry has, the Christmas party season hasn't happened in the way it normally would have done. So some of those services we haven't been able to put in place. So we are very, very conscious of making sure that we are budgeting very responsibly, but on balance we still believe that providing the free Christmas Day service is the right thing to do at this very difficult time. But of course we will respond to Mr. Jackson in detail in the next sort of 10 working days, and very much thank him for his question today. Okay, item 9, petitions and statements, we haven't had any, and item 10 is obviously any other urgent business approved by the chair. Well, there's no urgent business approved, but obviously this is our last meeting of 2020. I think I probably speak for everyone in saying that I think we're warmly looking forward to 2021 when we think about how challenging 2020 has been, and it really has been the sort of unexpected. I think it really just falls to me to wish everyone, members, officers, members of the public that might be kind of watching this, but also particularly extend these best wishes to everyone that will be working on the transport network across the festive period, to have a very happy Christmas and New Year, and particularly a peaceful and safe and healthy festive period, and look forward to 2021 as well, in which we're looking forward to seeing you at our first meeting a couple of weeks into January. So thank you very much, and I'll close the meeting accordingly.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year.